Hey, this is Tom Benty, the Tom Benty Media Podcast, and I am here with Gemma Mcllhenny, a proficient actor from outside of Philadelphia. And how I know Gemma is actually, well, to go way back. So I directed a TV pilot called The Caphone with a gentleman by the name of James Ciccone, who's a big actor. He's working very consistently, and he runs a course for actors. And Gemma was one of his students, and I'm doing this other production called the American Benefactor. And I reached out to him and said, hey, I'm looking for an actor for this role. And he's like, well, I got the best actor for you. And he referenced Gemma, and we had some really great conversations. And it was like an audition, but more of like a conversation, because he recommended her. And when you're working with somebody as an actor and as a director, which is what I'm doing with this project, the American Benefactor, you really want to have somebody that you have rapport with and that you can relate to. And not only are they a good actor and they can be believable in the scene, but that you just get along with. And, I'll speak for myself. Gemma can talk about her experience, but I just felt like I had a connection with her. I felt she was just not only talented, but we had a good vibe. We clicked for sure, both professionally, personally, and it's worked out well. And we have the first 2 episodes completed, and I'm submitting it to different film festivals. I will put the first episode, a link to that, which is on YouTube, in this description as well. But I'm reaching out to Gemma to be on the cast, not only because she's a great actor, but her story is very, very, I think it relates to a lot of people that are looking to get into acting, not as a child, but really as an adult, as a second career. And you're seeing that more and more in today's age. So Gemma, welcome. So happy for you to be here today. Really appreciate you coming on the cast.
Thank you so much for having me. And yes, definitely, I express your same feelings regarding meeting and having a connection. And I think that's really important, especially for more of the independent projects, because I believe that everyone involved is more passionate about them, and you really have to have a good connection with the cast and crew. So I was really, really pleased and happy when James recommended me, and I think that we had a good kickoff from the start. So thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure. Just like you said, I mean, with independent projects, generally you're not doing it for the paycheck, and I appreciate all the time that you spent on my project, the American Benefactor, but that personal connection is so important because it's a passion project. So you're not doing it for the residuals. You're not doing it for money. You're doing it because you believe in it and you believe in the people that are a part of it, and you have a good rapport with those individuals. So
absolutely.
So let's take it back. Growing up as a child, I believe you grew up in Philadelphia, correct?
That is correct.
And let's talk about your introduction into the arts, your introduction into acting back then when you were growing up.
Okay, so in West Philadelphia, born and raised, a little joke there. I was born a preemie, so I came into the world fighting, 2 pounds, 9 ounces. My mother was a school teacher, and she also, besides being an educator, with academics, she also taught dance and drama. She had a dance and drama club. And she was very, very emphatic regarding being creative, and that being just as important as anything you do in school. She felt that finding those creative ideas and thoughts and expressing them was very, very important to be well-rounded. So very early on, she helped me cultivate all the creative things that I do, acting being one of them.
So tell me a little bit about that process as a child. Were you involved in like school plays? Like, how did that go?
Absolutely. So her program in particular was an after school, like an after school program. So, you'd finish your school day, and then, we'd have lunch or, early dinner. And then, it was off to, go to the dance and drama club. And she incorporated not just the acting component, learning how to analyze a script, even portions of that, of us telling our own stories and kind of creating a story and a play based on, our own experiences. And, she added movement to that. And it was just really some great creative ways to, introduce us to that world. So not only did we do it for an after school program, but it branched into, my mother was very community oriented. She was a grassroots organizer and, fought for so many different social injustices and those type of things. And she was a intricate part of the Mantua Against Drugs program. And so not only did having theater in that dynamic, start me out, but it led to me helping her teach in communities where, programs like arts and crafts and dance and theater just weren't prevalent, budgets, funding, and those type of things. So it just really grew into some amazing experiences. But yes, we did school plays, we did the local library near our school, we put on performances there. And then it just branched out into, various different things. Like that was my, first introduction into having some real theater performances, some of the local theaters in Philly. And I also did take some classes at University City Arts League. So that was another component that helped me, kind of just developed the love of acting and theater. And it, eventually turned into more film than theater, but that's kind of how it started.
Cool. At that young age, when you're involved in theater and you're involved in acting, did it come easy to you? Did you automatically click with acting? And did you think, hey, maybe this is something I can pursue as a career?
So yes and no. It wasn't always easy. It's funny when you're the child of the teacher. It can be good and bad, because she was my mom. So, I always felt like, hey, I'm your child. Why am I not getting this role? So I learned early on that it's not always, you can't book every role. So that was definitely a good lesson to have. But I think it taught me that pretty much you can do anything that you work to do. And that's really what her goal in all of that was. One was to find that creative voice inside of you, but the other thing was to know that if you do the work, that you can pretty much achieve what you look to achieve. So it wasn't always easy. There were things that came easy for me, and I think it was just because I had someone who really supported that part of me. But it wasn't always easy, but I definitely felt like if that was something I wanted to do, I certainly could.
Okay, great. So you're graduating high school, you're 18 years old. What's next?
So the irony is that I also, I guess the part of what grounded me is, artists, I think, are we're not as focused. I think we have a lot of different things and different ideas, and we want to get them all done. So sometimes it's very hard to be grounded. So my mother's father was very, in a lot of ways, different than my mother. He was one of the first Black FBI agents for the Treasury Department, and he also had a very profound effect on me growing up as well. So I was an art major in high school, fine arts, because I draw and paint, I sculpt, I sing, I do so many things artistically. But I also spoke to him often and really thought about law enforcement as a career. And it kind of branched off of things that my mother did too, because, she did talk about change in communities and how to help people. And so I think between the two things, law enforcement started calling me a little more as I, got into my young adulthood. So by the time I was 21, I was already a Philadelphia police officer.
Wow. Can you tell us a little bit about that career?
Sure. So I started off in the 9th District, which is a great district to start because you basically have pretty much everyone, everybody, every race, creed, every social dynamic, every financial dynamic. You have from the financially poorest of the poor to the richest of the rich, all in one district. You also had residential and all of a good portion of Center City. So you had businesses. So there was a great deal of things to learn regarding law enforcement. And it was just a great district to start off in. So I was in patrol in the 9th District for 9 years. and, you know, had a lot of different roles, being a turnkey in a cell room, working a paddy wagon, you know, answering 911 calls in a police car. My first year was on a foot beat. That was, whew, that was a tough one. You know, you definitely get your feet wet when you're put out there on your legs. And the funny thing is, I had one of the biggest snowstorms we've had. I was on a foot beat, so none of the police cars could get up and down the street. So my partner and I, we were forced, like in snow that was up to our hips, to like try to answer all these 911 calls, which was crazy. But I loved the job. I then moved to being a district attorney detective, and that was a tough unit. I started off in the felony unit, and then I moved to the family violence and sexual assault unit. The nature of those jobs were just horrific. Unfortunately, you're not always called upon for people's happiest moments. So I was really glad that I was able to help people. There's a gray area. There's what happens on the street side of law enforcement, you know, the immediate response. And then there's this gray area of what happens investigation wise before a case goes to court. And I was kind of in that gray area. So I had a lot of warrants to serve to get people to court. And I also had to deal with, you know, the victims of the crimes, to try to, you know, talk to them and get everything straight, so that when the district attorney went to court, they had everything lined up that they needed. So it was definitely an amazing career. I wouldn't change anything. I got to help some amazing people. I got to meet some amazing people. I'm not going to get into, you know, cops versus people. And, you know, there's definitely a time right now where it's very challenging on both sides. I'm not going to get into any of that. I will say that I met some amazing, amazing, amazing police officers who I consider family. And I will also say that I met some amazing, amazing civilians out in the world who I was able to help.
Very cool. And how do you transition to acting after that? So you were there for what, I guess 20 years?
Actually, no, around 16 years. I actually injured a nerve in my neck and had some problems. So I ended a little early. But I always had the creative side in me, like it doesn't go anywhere. And of course, you know, you get older, you have a family, and then my free time, you know, because a police schedule is just so hectic, there's really, you know, no consistency. You know, oftentimes you're working long hours. So the time that I did have off, at this point, I've now, you know, I have a family, I have children. All of my free time that I did have, of course, goes to them and cultivating their, you know, extracurricular activities, their sports, their arts, their schoolwork, and all of those things. So I really didn't have time to focus on myself in that respect. And when I left law enforcement, all of a sudden, like this window opened. It's like, wait a minute, I have all of this free time now. I actually got my license in real estate, which is such a flexible thing to have and do afterwards, that I was like, wow, I really should focus on doing some of the things I love now. And it gave me an opportunity to kind of get back into acting, get back on the casting couch, if you want to say, and, you know, just kind of get back out there. And it's been amazing.
During that time as a police officer, those 16 years, I know it obviously was a very fulfilling experience. You have a lot of great things to say about the people that you've met, and even though some times were challenging, it seemed like it really molded you as a person. Did you miss acting? Like, did you always have it in the kind of the back of your mind? Like, you know, I kind of miss the theater. I miss the creative approach. Like, did you miss it during that time?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think anyone who is passionate about the craft of acting, it's something that's innately in them. It's a part of who they are. And for me, it was definitely always there. So I loved, you know, watching my children get to do things. You know, they were a part of several different programs where they, like, you know, community-based programs as well, where they got to do some acting and, you know, get that experience as well. So I enjoyed watching them do it. But of course, there's always this longing, like, wow, I really kind of miss being in front of an audience and telling a story. So yes, I miss it every day. Absolutely.
Gotcha. So you end your career a little bit early after about 16, 17 years. You have this free time. You always had this inclination for acting and creative arts. How do you make that transition to getting back on that horse? Like, what's that process like?
So for me, it was a matter of just kind of seeing which direction I wanted to go. Theater requires a different type of commitment than film and TV. And I was really curious about film and TV. And it was funny, as a police officer, like, you watch the cop shows, you're like, we would never do that. You know, it's just funny, like, you pick stuff apart. And so I was like, oh, I wonder if if I could now play a cop. You know, I have this experience. But I think my start really was, I just wanted to be on a film set. So I started out doing what a lot of people do, which is extra work, background work, finding out who was doing the casting for those projects, and trying to put my name in there and see if I could get a role. And
You did
I was
background work in New York and Philadelphia, or?
mainly in Philadelphia. There were some projects in New York or New Jersey, North Jersey, but mainly in the Philadelphia area. And it was Heary Casting that did a lot of that local work. So making a connection with them was prudent to start off with.
Do you think that's a good way to go, is to start out as, because I've heard different things regarding this, and I've done some background work in my career. But some people say, oh, if they see you as a background actor, they're not going to take you seriously as like a speaking part. Do you think that's true, or what's your experience with that?
I think in the beginning, they're not going to take you as an actor until you have some kind of experience. So I don't think that being on a film set in that dynamic is a bad thing. Depending on what you want to do with your career, you determine where you go as you grow. But I think it's definitely a good experience, because you get to see how the process works. You get to see who does what and what their roles are, and just really, you get an idea of what it's like, because people glamorize acting, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's long hours. It's very repetitive. So learning that early on, I think, is important. You do get to a certain point in your growth and maturity, just like anything, any job, any career, where you get to a level. And then it's just like, okay, what do I want to do now? And then you do have to choose, like, where do you want to go? Are you looking to do principal work where you're speaking, where you're really working on the craft of acting? Or do you want to continue doing background work, which is probably more consistent as far as opportunities, because it doesn't require the same stringency that auditioning for a role does. So I definitely got to a certain point where it's like, okay, I've done this, now what? And that's when I started looking at some student films. Temple University has an amazing film program. And so I started, auditioning for small roles in those projects, and, getting some acting experience under my belt. Those projects help you because you start to develop a film reel. Folks want to see that you can go on set, that you can memorize lines, that you can portray those roles authentically. And the student films was a good way to start that process.
Cool. So you did some work as a background actor just to kind of get your feet wet, to understand the process, being on set, seeing how it breaks down. You reach a certain point, you're like, I agree with you completely. Like, you can't do, I think that's what I did too, even back in like 2013, when I was kind of like getting back into more productions. I did some extra work, and then you reach a point where it's just like, we have to figure out a different path. And that's when you start doing more independent projects, student films. You get your headshots done. Hopefully the footage that you work with on these independent projects are good enough that you can put in some sort of acting reel. Maybe you have a website, and then it's a matter of taking it to the next level by getting an agent. And how has your experience been with getting an agent? Once you have the headshots, you have the reel from doing independent stuff that you're getting on Backstage, Actors Access, casting networks. How did you go about getting an agent?
So one other component of that is, finding some classes, some workshops, some scene study classes, audition technique, even stuff like teleprompter certification. Those kind of things are all very helpful. It's definitely ongoing learning. So that was definitely a part of that now. And just like you mentioned earlier, we met through James, who is a scene study coach. And I've been actively working with him for quite some time. And I still take classes with him now because it keeps your brain fresh. It keeps you, you should have a script that you're working on, whether you're on set or not. You need to keep your mind and your thought pattern fresh. And you can, just like anything, you stop doing it and, you lose that momentum, and then it's harder for you. So it's definitely ongoing work as far as classes as well. But yeah, you get all of those things, you get your headshots, you have some real footage. And with independent projects, it can go either way. You may get some footage and you're like, oh, I can't use this. This is terrible, but you were just so glad to be on set. And then you get some good stuff, and you're like, okay, I can work with this. So you get all that footage, you put it together, and you kind of create a package for yourself. You show that you have some film credits, you've done some work, you have this reel to show that you can act. You have some headshots, it shows you're taking this serious. And then you start to seek out an agent. Initially, my agency was local, just Philadelphia area. I was able to land an agent in the Philadelphia area, which was great. It took a while. It wasn't, it's a marathon, not a sprint in this acting journey. And I was able to land an agent, and then all of a sudden some great things opened up for me that I just wouldn't have been able to submit for, because there's so many closed castings that you just, you have to have an agent in order to even be considered to audition. So that was a great start with having Reinhardt agency, and just having a local agency to push me and help me and give me a couple of pointers, like, well, this headshot is okay, but we need something that looks more like a mom, or you've got the cop thing pegged down because you're naturally that, but we need something that's softer. And then you just start to kind of develop your package more and more. And Reinhardt was a great venue for me, because I was able to book some principal roles in some really good projects. And that, sorry, a phone call was coming in there.
No worries.
I was eventually able to branch out and land a New York agent. I now have a Southeast agent. So it's definitely been growth. It's amazing, but it's definitely takes time. You really have to develop yourself and be patient and really understand the process, because it's not always quick.
And to get that agent, initially, it was just a matter of submitting on their website. Like, how did you go about that?
So yes, a couple of things. I reached out to some actors who were working as, actively working, who were mentoring me and helping me through the process, and just discussed with them, what's the process? What do you do? And, they kind of guided me along. And basically, yes, it's a matter of finding the casting website. For me, being a SAG member, making sure it's a SAG franchised agent, and, submitting to them. They usually have some type of submission email where you kind of, present yourself and introduce yourself to them. And it's basically like a hit or miss. Either they will respond, and usually it even takes a few months for that, or you don't hear anything back. I was like, okay, they weren't interested, and you kind of move on. So I went down a list of people and really just, looked at where they were and, what they said on their sites, and just picked who I thought I might be a good fit for. And that's essentially what happened.
Awesome. Let's just take it back a step. When you first started to get back into acting, you have experience as a child, took a bunch of years off, became a police officer, you're getting back in. What were some of the challenges that you faced even internally? Like, were you hesitant? Like, did you have maybe some self-confidence issues in terms of, hey, can I really do this? Or was it just like, you just slid back in, you're like, this is who I am, and and just went about it very seamlessly, or were there some hesitations on their part?
So for me, there wasn't hesitation, but there definitely was the like, okay, I'm not a young buck anymore. I'm not coming into this in my early teens. I'm definitely a mature adult at this point. And is there a place for me? And it took, I guess, supportive family and just, talking it out for me to say, you know what? There's not one film I look at where there isn't some grown folks in there. There isn't some elderly folks in there, some young people. And then I thought about it. The acting community is just a small representation of the real world. So there's a place for me in there if I seek it out. And that's really where I just decided, you know what, I can do this. It doesn't matter what age I am. I look at so many A-list actors, celebrity actors who started off so late in their careers, and they were able to do it. So it's just, it's mind over matter. It's understanding that there's going to be way more no's than there are yeses, and just having that endurance. And it's definitely muscle building, because you got 50 chances and you may get a call back on 2, you know what I mean? So you can't wear your feelings on your sleeve. You just have to do your best work and leave it in the audition room and move on to the next one. And that's really the thing that I've learned the most, is to not take it personal. It's still a business. And you still have to understand that you can go into the audition room and kill the audition. You just did your best work. And then you find out, oh, well, they decided they wanted a white guy for the role. You know what I mean? There's things you can't change. You can't change your physicality. You look how you look. So then you learn to understand that, okay, the audition is only one part of the process. There's so many other variables that, I may not fit the criteria for. And there's more than one person making the decision. So, you just push forward, and, that's all you can do, one foot in front of the other.
And can you tell us a little bit about your audition process? Like, how do you break down the script? Can you give any tips in terms of making your audition the best it possibly can be?
Sure. So, James has been, if anyone's looking for a scene study coach, James Ciccone is the man, okay? But he's really helped me develop, and it's not specifically his, it's components of what he's taught, and you add your own kind of thing to it. But script analysis is so important. The first thing is actually reading it through. And then what I learned is to put it down and to listen to what I've read in my head, to hear the story, to visualize the story, to see it. And the the biggest thing I took from one of the first classes I took with James was, he said, if someone tells you a joke and you connect with that joke and you get the punchline, he said, probably 2 or 3 weeks from now, 2 months from now, you could probably tell that joke. And if you look at a script that way, connect with it, figure out what your goal is, who you are, where you are, and why you're there, and what your purpose is there, is so much easier to connect with the role. And that was such an important lesson for me, because I was really caught initially into, I got to learn these words. I got to learn these words. I got to learn these words. And then they're just words. The words have to have a meaning. And that's where the authenticity in acting comes in. Because if you look at television, they're not overacting like in theater. Theater is very bold and loud. And, TV acting is completely different. It's very calm. It's very, nuanced. It's very conversational. And so you have to find the power in the words. So finding the power in the words is simply understanding what's happening. And then another thing I do, especially for smaller scenes, is I create in my head what that character was doing before the scene started and what they'll be doing afterwards, because then I kind of have a complete picture and I have a place to start in my presentation, and that has worked very well for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's so true. It's the theater acting is so different from film and TV, especially now. I think even like since the time that I've been in this industry in the last 20 years, theater acting is very, very different than film and TV in terms of how grounded film and TV is. If you watch
Absolutely.
television now, even as opposed to, years ago, you're seeing it's basically people just having a conversation. There's very little emotion, but it's just grounded in reality. Recently I watched a TV movie from like 20 years ago, and it was much more theatrical. It was a little over the top, not terribly, but you could still notice it. And if that was made today, it would probably be very different. I just finished Queen's Gambit, and the lead character's performance was so marvelous, and it was so subtle, so subtle. I mean, she barely said it's, but you gravitate towards her because it's just so real, and it's organic, and it's natural, and it's genuine. And that's a big part of it. And I think a lot of actors, including myself throughout the years, you get caught up in like, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to show emotion. And that's not what it's about. It's about just being grounded, being real, and being authentic to your character, yourself, and to the scene.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And once you learn that, it makes things so much easier, because you look at a line, you look at a line on the script, and it's like, why would you do that? You're thinking, why would you do that? But no one wants to, that's not real. But then if it's subtle and you're like, why would you do that? It's a completely different thing. It changes it. It's believable and it's authentic, just like you said. And once you make those connections and you connect those characters to yourself, to your story, to your own experiences, it's so much easier to portray a role. And the power is really in the words. It really is with TV and film.
And I think the first step, even before that, is to just be comfortable with yourself and have the confidence in yourself to do a scene organically and not rely on those over emotions, and just being very comfortable in your own skin and believe in yourself. And like you said, especially when it comes to auditions, listen, most roles, I mean, they're seeing literally hundreds of people for one role that you might have one line. And that's just the way the industry is. So it's not in your favor. The odds are definitely against you. And you can't take it personally because, again, they might, they're seeing all different types of actors, all different types of types, and they might go with somebody completely different. It has nothing to do necessarily with your performance, though we want to make sure that performance is as good as it can be every single time. But there's things just out of our control. And once you understand that and you realize, hey, I didn't get this one, but I'll get the next one. And James is a great example of that. Talking to him, he has a very holistic attitude about it, very meta attitude about it, in terms of it'll come. I'm doing the work. It might not be this audition, it might not be the next, but as long as I'm grounded and I'm doing the work and I'm providing great auditions time in and time again, which comes with that practice, which comes with that persistence, it's going to come. And that's the attitude that you have to have, I believe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you couldn't have said it any better. It's constant work. And if you lose sight of that, you're already setting yourself up for failure, because you have to understand that you have to just keep working, keep pushing forward, keep, developing yourself, the art of the craft. And it's an ongoing process. It doesn't just stop, even folks that are so far more established and series regulars, major, leads in films, they are still putting in the work. And it's just a part of the process. So definitely.
Can you tell us a little bit about some of your memorable roles?
Sure. Let's see. So I'll start off with student films. There's a project called Princess Pussy, and I play a gynecologist. That was my first real comedic type of film. And it's memorable to me because I had to learn with comedy, again, that it's still primarily subtle. It's what you're saying versus how you're performing saying it. So the humor was just in the situations with my patients and, what I was saying to them. And it was an interesting film because I was a gynecologist who was trying to make a patient feel more comfortable about this kind of being her first experience with those kind of visits. And everything I was just saying was wrong. It was making her feel worse. And it's was kind of a true story for, you know, some things that the writer had experienced. So it was really fun to bring that story in particular to life. And also, even behind the camera for Creed 2, working as Phylicia Rashad's photo double and stand-in for that film. Even though I was not, you know, the moments that you do see me, you don't know that it's me. Even though I was just kind of a silent observer, just being able to come to set every day, you know, do her scenes to set up the set, you know, the camera, block everything out, and the lighting, and, you know, being able to actually do her lines with the stand-in for whoever it was, Michael B. Jordan, Tessa Thompson, to be able to, you know, do those scenes and then step aside and then watch them come in and do them. And, you know, be able to assist, you know, like having Phylicia Rashad ask me, oh, so where do they have me standing, Gemma? Here? It's just like, oh, you know, it was really so cool. And just to watch her take very simple scenes and just do a beautiful work with them was such a phenomenal experience. I worked many, many days on that set, and it was great. It was beautiful. And then I'd say the other project that stands out to me the most right now would be Snow Babies, which is Philly Born Productions. It's a very raw and intense film regarding teen addiction, something that, you know, most families, not maybe not a teenager, but most families have some, you know, it's very much a part of the world right now, the world of addiction. So this story in particular, you know, had some very personal meaning to me. And I played a police officer at a very pivotal moment in the film. And that was, the scene was so important to me, and the movie was so important to me to work on, that there was a locations issue. And so my shoot dates completely changed. And I was actually supposed to be on vacation in Aruba with my husband. And I actually canceled the trip, rescheduled it, lost money, just so that I could continue with that role, because it was such a powerful role in the film. So Snow Babies is definitely one of my top roles at this point in my career.
Yeah, I saw that based on your recommendation. It's on Amazon Prime right now, I think, to rent. And I saw
Yes. Most of the streaming platforms right now, it's still to rent. A great thing about it is the proceeds are going to the Amy Winehouse Foundation, and is going to all, you know, recovery initiatives, which is really cool. But yeah, powerful film. You know, no filters, no, you know, no, everything is happy. It's very, very realistic in terms of you know, what a lot of people go through in that cycle of addiction. And just a really powerful film, shot beautifully. Bridget Smith, the director, did a beautiful job. The writer, Mike, did an amazing job. You know, they did all of their diligence as far as, you know, vetting, you know, material, and talking to addicts in various stages of their addiction, whether they are in the range of recovery or if they're still actively using, and just really making the story as authentic and believable as possible. And it's just done beautifully. And I was really proud to have such a great scene with such a talented cast.
Yeah, that was a wild film. Very raw, very powerful, very memorable too. So
Absolutely.
I definitely recommend everyone checking that out, whether it be on Prime or the different platforms via rent. So really powerful film, Snow Babies. So before we conclude, I forgot to mention this earlier, but I know that you actually went to school as a kid with a very famous actor. And if you could tell us a little bit about that, I think it would be interesting for my audience to hear about.
So it's so funny because we're talking about Will Smith, and that was actually a little joke that I made earlier. The whole in West Philadelphia, born and raised, because that's, you know, his prelude. But it was my sister, who actually had all of the classes with him because they're a little older than me. And my sister is very introverted. I was very extroverted. So I, got to kind of enjoy the fact that he was so intricately involved in our neighborhood, in our community, and, because they were friends. And so, he had threw amazing birthday parties, and, my sister wouldn't go to any of the parties, but I went to all his, his parties. I got to meet cool folks like Heavy D, rest his soul, and Kid and Play. And he was a shining example of how a kid from Overbrook High School could pretty much get out there and do what they set their mind to. He shot a music video. It was the I Think I Can Beat Mike Tyson song that he did. And he shot the video literally, our house was on the corner of 56th Street in Winfield. And he shot a scene at the barbershop that was on the diagonal corner across from our house. And so that was actually one of my first times being an extra for any type of film project. And then I learned early on too that your scene doesn't always make it, because I don't see myself at all in that video, but I was there. And he was just a really cool guy, very grounded, still very much the same if you see his interviews and everything else. But it was just such a cool thing to be able to be around someone who was, you just watched them go from, Will Smith from the hood to this phenomenal actor, rapper, and all the other things that he's done, production, producing, he's done it all now. He's big time. But even the scene in the video where he's punching on some raw meat or whatever it is, boxers do crazy stuff. But that ice shop was right around the corner from the house. So he was just always a part of everything. He wasn't the type to isolate himself from the community. He was very much a person who was there. You'd see him walking down the street. You'd be at Fairmount Park and you'd see him walking out of Memorial Hall. And, it was just a really cool experience to have someone like that just be in your midst and still be grounded and be, personable and, treat you as an equal. So that was some of the coolest experiences growing up, was getting to go to the social stuff.
That's so cool. That's so cool. And finally, Gemma, what's next? What do you hope for the next years with your career? Where do you see yourself going?
So growth. I have some projects now that I can't really talk about that I'm really excited about that are will be coming to pass and into fruition soon. And it's just, continuing to get to the next level. It's like anything, it's tiers, it's in tiers and levels. I'm so grateful and thankful to see the growth even over the last few years. It's been an amazing journey. And just to keep moving forward, moving from co-stars and guest stars to, recurring or, series regular, looking for some major supporting roles in films, or, we always want the lead, but that's always the goal, is to just keep pushing to the next level and, to still appreciate where you are and what you do get, because you have to realize that out of all those people, they chose you. And what an amazing thing that is.
That's so true. Well, we wish you all the best and thank you so much. And let's stay in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.